Welcome to Ask the Tech Coach, brought to you by the TeacherCast Educational Network. If you are in charge of professional development and looking to build an innovative digital learning experience, this is the podcast for you. Join us each week as we uncover strategies that tech coaches are using to drive their digital transformations one classroom at a time. And now for your host, with over 2 decades of experience working with tech coaches and ed tech companies from all around the world, Jeff Bradbury.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. This is Ask the Tech Coach podcast, episode number 229, and I hope you've had a great first half of the year. Many of you are going to be listening to this as you are getting ready to leave for the holidays. I know myself, I'm looking forward to a great week. This week, you got holiday parties, you got gift giving, you got seeing the kids' faces all light up. And of course, next week, hey, we're going to party. No shows coming out next week, but we do have some great things happening over at the Instructional Coaches Network. Don't forget to head on over to askthetechcoach.com. Scroll down to the bottom, join our Facebook group, join our LinkedIn group. Even join us over on K12leaders.com. We've got some great things going on in 2023, and I'm so happy that you guys are here. Do me a favor. It is the holidays. Share this episode with your friends. We got some great things going on today. My guest today is kind of different, and I'm looking forward to this interview. I met my guest a few months ago. We started talking about a project that he's working on, about superheroes, about pop culture, about how teachers can be something a little bit different. Teachers can be entertaining. Teachers can be exciting. And I am so happy to have today on my guest, Mr. Daniel Bergman. Daniel, how are you today? Welcome to Ask the Tech Coach.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to have you on. I mean, we've been talking the last 20 minutes or so pop culture before, and I said, let's just start the recording here and have a good time. But tell the world a little bit about where you are. You're out in Wichita area.
That is true. Yes. Yeah. So I'm a professor at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas. And I just finished my 15th year. I'm a professor and I'm the program chair of science education. So I work with mostly science teachers, but I also teach some classes for elementary teachers, and I do workshops for teachers from all grades. And I even get a chance to work with kids from time to time, teaching science and other things.
You know, I want to start talking about a topic that we recently had on the TeacherCast podcast, which was about higher education. We had a guest on from the University of Pennsylvania, and we basically were talking about how teachers these days are looking for something a little bit different. Teachers these days are looking for programs. What is it like to be teaching teachers these days, teaching adults, helping adults either make career decisions or advance in their own careers? What's it like these days over at Wichita State University?
Well, like a lot of places, we need teachers. And I see that, of course, as a science teacher or a science educator, I see that even more so, but even across the board, partly because of the pandemic and partly because of other things as well, just, the changing of culture, changing of society, how things are going. I learned really quickly when I started this part of my career, because before this, I was a high school science teacher. I taught chemistry and physics primarily, but I learned real quickly teaching teachers is harder than teaching chemistry or teaching physics. It's more of a life change rather than just you're learning and understanding content. You're actually trying to change what you do as an instructor in the classroom.
It's not an easy thing, is it?
No, I think we have a lot of pre-held beliefs and all kinds of things. Whatever the subject is, whatever the discipline is. Even we talk about that in science, how we have misconceptions or preconceptions about how the world works, but I think we do that in education as well, where most of us spent, a decade and a half in schools settings, in formal school setting, and we think, oh, well, I kind of know what it is to be in the classroom. I know what it is to be a teacher, but I know I felt that way when I was graduating high school and thinking I wanted to be a teacher. But then I think we forget, or we don't realize, oh, there's all these other things that go on behind the scenes. It's a different perspective from the other side of the desk, so to speak, but all the planning, all the decision making, which I enjoy, but it does make it more challenging.
Now, you have an interesting take on education. You're actually on a mission right now to have teachers teach like, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about what do you want teachers to be teaching like?
Well, I am a certified geek, I guess, or I'm a super geek. I don't know, super nerd. I would say we all should teach like superheroes. And I know there's books out there. There's Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov. There's Teach Like a Pirate. There's other things as well. Good resources. My wheelhouse, so to speak, is I was a child of the 80s. So I grew up, pop culture, cartoons, comic books, movies. And I kind of like superheroes even before they were cool, before all the movies were box office, hits and things like that. So as I've been working on things, writing, even teaching science with superheroes, whether it's from a movie or comic book stories or cartoons. But I also notice there's a lot of parallel with what teachers do with what superheroes do, not to be like a pandering, because I've heard people say that too. Oh, you're a superhero because you're a classroom teacher. It's very sometimes said almost like you're a saint. But I see it as in, we have strengths, we have superpowers, so to speak. We use gadgets and gizmos. We have origin stories. We have weaknesses like kryptonite in a different way. And so there's all these parallels I saw. And so that got me thinking about, what I could do with that to help teachers just maybe refresh their enthusiasm for teaching, reflect on their teaching, both as, inspiration, but also just information as well. So I'm currently working on a book. It's coming out next year in 2023. It's called Teaching is for Superheroes. And then I also write a blog that I update regularly about things in the news with superheroes and how that relates to teaching.
I love your passion for pop culture, and I want to dive into this. But before we do, Coke or Pepsi?
I'm more of a unsweet iced tea kind of a guy. But if you had to tell me, probably Diet Coke.
So when we're looking at this teach like a superhero concept here, I mean, I'm reading your blog. I'm looking what you have here. You're writing posts all about Marvel. You're writing posts about X-Men. You're writing posts about comic books. What do you want teachers to get or understand or come out of when they come to your website, teachlikeasuperhero.blog?
Sure. So through my blog and even in my teaching now, when I taught science, we always look for those analogies, those pop cultural references that will help our kids remember, in my case, a lot of times it was science content, like, oh, here's an analogy, or it's kind of like this in this movie. Or I would use examples from movies to teach physics. Like, this is when I started, this will date me, but when I started teaching, The Matrix was really big. So we'd look at the stunts done in The Matrix, the first Matrix movies, and look at, well, is that really possible? Or since it's a movie, of course, and kids love pointing out, oh, that's fake or that's special effects. But we would actually do the math and calculate, well, how fast would they have to be running and things like that. So I see that power of familiarity with what we see in our day-to-day lives. When I taught science, it was, oh, well, the next time they see that movie or see a commercial or see, some reference to that, they might think, oh yeah, I remember learning about trajectory motion when we did that, talk about that movie. I see the same power in our teaching that we can think about, oh yeah, I kind of do have some strengths, or, I do have some weak spots, or I do need to have a sidekick or a mentor, like a Batman and a Robin kind of thing. And so I think there's power in that familiarity of things from our pop culture experiences. For me, superheroes, and they're kind of big right now. They may not always be, but I think they're kind of our modern mythology that we use today. But to see that the power of reflecting on those, enjoyable, fun type things and seeing how we can apply those to our teaching.
You were mentioning the power of reflection. That has to come from the fact that, G.I. Joe, He-Man, all of these cartoons from the 80s had that little tail at the end where there was some kind of moral to the story. Before we deep dive into that, I'll just ask, G.I. Joe or Transformers?
Ooh, I had both, but I would say I was probably a bigger G.I. Joe fan. Loved my Snake Eyes, loved my Stalker, Storm Shadow. I have to say, I was one of those fanboys for Snake Eyes, and the comic books kind of hinted at a romance with Scarlet, so that was always nice. It felt like I was a mature kid, 10-year-old, reading about romance in a comic book.
It is important that teachers always keep in mind that they have a purpose, right? And as a coach, I try to keep that conversation alive with my teachers too. You're doing a great job. The kids are loving you. You're having a good time. Oh, by the way, now what do you want to work on? Like, I'm always trying to be positive and always trying to keep a good thing on there. There are many teachers that are looking at us as coaches saying, I don't know how much longer I have, or I don't know if I'm making a difference, or, I recently, it's 4 a.m. and I haven't gone to sleep yet because I have so much stuff to do. What's your take on this? What's your take on education? I don't want to put you in a corner here like baby and say, what's your take on post-pandemic K-12-ness? But I mean, how can a coach help and support teachers that need that little Optimus Prime pep talk every now and then?
Yeah, the more you know, and knowing is half the battle. I just had a panel of first-year teachers, former graduates of my program, come and talk to my current batch of seniors that are getting ready to do their full-time traditional, student teaching this spring. They've been out in the schools a lot, kind of a part-time internship, and then they're going into a full-time internship. And so I had about 4 of my former students come back, talk to them, and I like it because it shows them that, for one thing, yes, you can make it. These people did. You can make it through all the rigmarole of graduation and student teaching, which is challenging of itself. But I also like them being new because they work with mentor teachers who have experience for several years, and sometimes we forget what it was like for the first time. We may think we'll never forget how tough it was or what we did with those first couple of years, but some of those things just become more automatic when the more experience you gain. So I like to bring in fresh, first-year teachers. But to get to your question, the interesting thing with that panel, they talked for about an hour, just kind of a Q&A with my students. There was a lot of tiredness, fatigue, which is expected for first-year teachers, and a lot of challenges that they were sharing. Again, a lot of it just getting back into the swing of things because they all had lived through the pandemic themselves as well. And so one thing came up. I thought, and this to get to your question again, I asked them after they kind of shared, here's a challenge, here's a struggle I have with the student, or here's a fight I had to break up and things like that. These are mostly middle school, high school teachers. I asked them, well, can you tell me what's a student or an experience you've had recently that reminded you why you want to teach? And it got them to stop and think. For one thing, I want to kind of make sure, remember why we're doing this and the impact that we can have, and that we do make a positive influence. Sometimes we focus on those challenging students. I had one mentor tell me, we always have that kid or that class that makes us earn our paycheck. We have to, that's the one we really work on. But we often forget all those other kids, all those other classes, in some cases that, they're a delight. We are making a difference. And so they shared some stories where it was just, here's one kid that wouldn't turn in anything. And for, one day they actually, decided to do their work and turn it in. Or one of them said, this kid came in for some extra help at lunch and they actually told me thank you afterwards. And so I think we often can kind of overlook those small experiences, that positive impact that we actually do have day to day, moment to moment, whether it's a student or a parent or a colleague that we might have made a difference from.
I think those are powerful stories, and even as you're saying that, I'm thinking back to, where I'm coaching right now. I've got this one class of kindergartners that the first time I walked in, I taught them all, if you see me in the hallway, give me a fist bump. And they like doing that. But this particular one class, whenever I walk in, and I feel horrible about this, they somehow like to jump up and give me a group hug as if I was Rocky around the statue. And it's the sweetest thing that I've ever had an experience with as a teacher or a coach. But I love that, right? And that's no matter what, you're doing something cool. And that just makes me want to go back and have fun and do more things with them. By the way, Cobra Commander or Destro?
Ooh. Cobra Commander for the entertainment, Destro for the battle plan. He was always the brains.
Well, but let's talk about that, right? Because when it comes to being positive about education, creating lesson plans, doing all these great things, you have to have both that insane, crazy Cobra Commander side, but you also have to have that strategic Destro of, here's where we are, we're going there, we're needing to go there. How do you teach that? How do you teach a teacher who might be new or might be doing this for the last 10 years? And again, we're talking to coaches here. How do you help teachers get to that part where they have the technology, they have the curriculum, they have the, the it factor, if you will? How do we make sure that when we're walking into classrooms to support our teachers, that we can bring a little bit of our Cobra Commander and a little bit of our Destro?
I wish I were better at this. Being able just to read the room, to read people. I think, different people have different strengths, but it's one challenge I have for myself to be better at. But I think one of the first things to do, I do this whenever I go out to, especially for in-services, my college students, okay, well, they're taking college classes. Of course, they're supposed to, be there to learn. But when I go out to in-services or conferences, whether it's back to school or a regional state conference, I often begin with saying, you're the expert. You know your kids, you know your classroom, because I've been there too, where it's like, okay, who's going to come tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I need to do to get better? What's the new thing I have to add back onto my plate? And I remember you had talked with on a previous podcast about a lot of these things. We're not trying to add on to their plate, not trying to throw more things on them, but we're trying to look at how we can enhance and help you help get better, and maybe even streamline what you're doing. So I always try to begin with saying, teachers, you know your kids, you know your content, you know your context, the classroom, who you're working with, and I don't think anybody would expect to say, I know it all. But but I would assume I would say, they know what they're doing. My job is to help you. Hey, here's some more ideas on how to get better. Try something. If it doesn't work, I wouldn't say just throw it out, but work on it, see how it might fit what you're already doing. I think that's one thing as a teaching, we talk about, and especially at college, like, oh, here's the research, here's the theory, and we often sometimes get accused, rightfully so, of kind of being maybe not practical. And so I try to always emphasize, the practical application, but also make it fit your situation, make it fit your personality. Like if you're not a geek and you don't like nerdy things that have been popular for the last couple of decades, maybe you like music, or maybe you like sports. I mean, I like those things too, but take those elements and, bring your own personality into that. I see that with my teachers who work with a mentor right now. You don't have to copy exactly what the mentor is doing, because they have their personality, they have their background, they have their strengths. You can have your own strengths and personality as well. And so that's kind of a fun thing to do, is to bring those in together and make your teaching shine, that nobody else would be able to do it except for you.
Well, you had mentioned going in and being able to read the room. And if I can ask the detective question, and I'm going to tell you and the audience, there is only one answer that is correct for this question. The best movie or TV Batman.
Best movie or TV Batman. I am fond of Kevin Conroy and Batman the Animated Series.
Wrong. The answer is Adam West. Adam West, for those playing the home game on that. But it is about being that detective and going in there, and as you said, read the room, figuring out where you are with things, and then trying to figure out how to make that first move, how to move that chess match. And a lot of times for coaches, sometimes the answer is not today, right? You go into a room and you could just tell that teacher has maybe been through an observation. Maybe there's a parent, maybe there's a kid, right? And I know for myself, it's one thing to say, Danny, how you doing? And there's another time to go, you doing okay today? And you kind of do have to read that room and figure out what cape you need to have on. Are you going to have on the superhero cape? Are you going to have on the detective cape? Are you going to have on the take 5 minutes? I'm going to go up and help you out. Or, and I'll ask this question too. Do you need 15 minutes? I'm happy to go do something with the kids for a while. And sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes the answer is, oh my goodness, thank you. And you, as a coach, we always need to be reading that room to figuring out where things are. What's your thought on all of this? I mean, when we're looking at this and when you're working with teachers, I'm sure that there's times where, you see a class or you see a bunch of teacher students. Some of them might have been through a day. Some of them might be excited to be there. But sometimes, I just got through my grad school. Sometimes you're looking around at your teachers that are in school with you and you're like, oh, you had one of those days too. How do you approach all of that?
Yeah, I think as you know, with teaching, we talk about, there's the power of questions, and we should ask effective questions with our kids. And I think the same is true for when you work with teachers, to start with asking, like, how can I help? Or what's on your mind today? I like to ask my students or my teachers I work with, well, tell me, first of all, if I'm unfamiliar with their situation, if it's been a while or whatever, I'll just say, well, tell me about your class, or tell me what's going on right now. Are you in the middle of a unit? Are you transitioning to a different activity? What are you doing this particular day? And then I also like to ask, what's a concern you have right now, or what's a challenge, which I think opens the door to say, you don't have to have it perfect. Nobody's ever perfect, but what are you trying to work on? I like to say that the best teachers are always trying to get better. There's definitely good and bad teachers, but we're all trying to get better. But definitely just kind of watching, and again, I've had probably more experiences of probably not handling it right than handling it correct. At least maybe I'm just hard on myself, but just stopping and saying, well, just like with teachers, okay, well, here's my lesson plan, but you know what? We're not going to do what that plan said. We need to pivot and do some other things. I mean, I remember teaching on all kinds of situations, a lot of times, sad situations like September 11th. I remember when that happened, we definitely changed what we were planning to do that day. I've had other days where we had a sudden death on the school staff that morning and having to adjust for what you did with the students that day. I also went in one time to watch a teacher, and when I first approached, he was outside talking to a student, kind of calmly, just conversationally. I thought it was between passing periods. He came in, I watched him teach, did great. I remember talking to him afterwards, and that's when he said, that kid I was talking to when you first came in, like an hour ago, he said, well, right before he came, he was really mad about the class before, and he came in and threw a desk across the room. And I didn't know that because the kid was perfectly calm. I didn't even pick that up. And he said, so I just wanted to kind of pull him off and just talk to him. And it made me always think of that experience of, that was great that teacher did that, in that, first of all, he had to deal with all that, let alone he was getting observed by somebody like me, but as well as, sometimes we fly off the handle, like, well, what are you doing that for? But like, just, whoa, let's just wait and see what's going on, de-escalate with that case with a student, but even with teachers, like, okay, how can I help you? And like you said, can I help out for 5 minutes? Do you want me to stay out of the way? What would be best to serve you? It doesn't always have to be at that moment.
Talking today to Danny Bergman all about his blog, teachlikeasuperhero.blog. All the notes and stuff are going to be over on our show notes. Ask the Tech Coach podcast, episode 229. I want to talk to you a little bit about what you're up to these days. I mean, when you are writing these blogs, they're very detailed. You're pulling from comic book, you're pulling from YouTube videos, you're pulling from diagrams and dioramas and all of these different things. How do you come up with these topics to write in depth, but everything you're putting out here is really, really awesome stuff?
Sure. Well, I love my job. I get to work with teachers. I get to teach teachers, and I love teaching too. And I know it's a common reflection on people who were teachers and now they work with teachers, or they don't work maybe day to day with the same group of kids. I definitely miss that day to day relationship with the kids that you build up, but I get to work with teachers now. And so they get to impact, the kids. And so it's just a little bit different, but I love being able to balance both teaching and also mentoring and doing research as well as writing. And that's what I do a lot with here. Again, with this superhero thing, again, I can nerd out, and I've got a very sympathetic or a very generous wife that will let me nerd out. And now I can do it with my kids too. But I think of an interview I heard Bruce Springsteen on NPR a while back, and he had said that he was reflecting on his career and his legacy. And he had said, I realized I wasn't the best guitar player when he first was trying to start out as a rock star, as a musician. And he said, I also realized I'm not the best singer. But he said, I concluded, though, maybe I'm not the best at either of those things, but nobody can write the songs I can write. Nobody can write the lyrics, come up, and definitely we think about the way his songs, I'm not a huge Bruce Springsteen's fan, but just the way he, does talk about like the working class and born in the USA and all that. And, but I think, and anybody has this too, I think I like teaching, and I like superheroes and geeky things, comic books. And so I thought, I could kind of merge those together and kind of put those together. I know there's other people that do both and do both together as well. but I do like to look at, just how those connections kind of fall. Sometimes it's a stretch, but at least it's a springboard maybe to at least reflect on teaching, which again, for some of it, I'm like my audience number one myself to reflect on my own teaching. Like, oh yeah, am I doing these things that I'm writing about? Am I see the connections here? But it's just a challenge to, again, have people reflect on those things as they see, especially on the blog. I try to talk about current events or recent announcements, or right now with movies and TV shows always coming out about every other week, it seems. There's always something new to maybe talk about. But sometimes I'll begin with an education topic and kind of connect it to a superhero story or a superhero character. Again, just to strengthen that, when I see that movie or when I see that, character on a cereal box or a toy aisle or something, I can think about, what I do as a teacher.
If we're looking back in time, who would be your favorite inventor of time travel? Dr. Emmett Brown or Tony Stark, and why?
I would have to go Doc Brown. I think that's the standard for time travel stories. H.G. Wells, sure, but that was kind of a downer. That story is kind of a downer, but.
If you look at Dr. Brown, which my wife and I just watched the Back to the Future trilogy again, and if you look at the arc of Tony Stark and Peter Parker, they both had, it was the Batman and Robin connection of, I'm going to do this, but don't follow me. But I'm glad you're here with me and let's enjoy the ride. But I want to get this thing killed so we can finish off the mission and get back home to be with our families. And there's a lot. I'm just saying, this is a future blog post. There's a lot of similarities there. If you want to do the Back to the Future trilogy and you want to do, Spider-Man, what is it? 1, 2, 3, right? Like there's an arc there, Danny. That's all I'm going to say. Let's nerd out for a second, as if we haven't been already. We've gone through now, 145 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Where are you with this? Are you excited about the Kang Dynasty? Are you interested in the multiverse saga? What's your thoughts on where we've been in the last year and a half?
It is a pivot point, with movies, of course, the actors aging, there's always that discussion of like, okay, well, now what do we do? Because this person doesn't want to be Captain America forever. So I thought, they kind of had that major phase, with Endgame finish with some characters, permanently and thereafter. Again, real world history with shutdown and everything and switching to streaming more, that was interesting. I mean, I guess in 5-10 years, we'll look back on this and see how, all this played out. But with the series, it really does. A lot of the series, Ms. Marvel, I think is a great series to think about. Again, back to that teenage superhero type thing, as well as secret identity and a family system, and as well as history lessons as well. I loved Hawkeye, the mentoring of the new Kate Bishop, the Hawkeye character, and so I think those series were nice because you could kind of take longer time to explore some of the character moments where you may not get that in a movie. But I am excited to get back to the movies. Trying to think of the last one. Thor: Love and Thunder, pretty good. I'm not sure if they know what to do with that yet, but
I was hoping they would make more out of the cocktails and dreams on the goat boat. I was excited to see the cocktails reference, but there was nothing really made out of it.
Yes, yeah. And the actual comic book. Here's geeking out. The comic book story of that with Jane Foster becoming the mighty Thor. Spoiler alert for anybody who hadn't known that yet. Sorry. And her cancer treatments. I mean, and there's even some science in there too. I'd like to explore that, but or superhero science. But I thought it touched on a lot of things that it's hard to do sometimes in a movie. I think it's one thing the Marvel movies have done is they have a lot of things going on, and they just get more and more complicated. And I think they've really handled it pretty well by taking it slow to begin with. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of. I don't know if we're building up too much to the Kang Dynasty. It's like I like to enjoy the small moments too. Like I'm really looking forward to the Ant-Man and Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I saw what you did there. The small moments. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yes, yes, that was on purpose. I will retroactively say. But yeah, I remember when I started reading comic books. The moneymakers are the crossovers and the big events that they would do, once a year, where they would, you have to buy more comic books to follow the whole story. But sometimes what that would do is it really make all the other stories kind of just filler almost. And so I kind of like those comic books that just go on for years and years. They can tell this long form of a story where you can really enjoy all those character moments. And so I think with the movies too, if we focus so much on those big events, you kind of miss out on those small events, which I'm sure there's maybe a blog entry there too. I'll have to write about, don't forget the small moments. Forget the power of not just the big, tentpole events, but also every moment can matter.
All right, last nerdy question here, and I'm sorry if you're listening to this still and you're tired of these kinds of silly questions, but this one's not a silly question. Danny, what is your favorite non-green Muppet?
Oh, Gonzo.
Okay, that was the right answer.
Gonzo.
That was the right answer. Okay, good. You mentioned at the top of the show that you have a book that's coming out. Tell us a little bit about it. What made you write it, and when will we be able to check it out? Sure.
If you couldn't tell already, it's about superheroes and teaching. It is called Teaching is for Superheroes, and it's May 31st, 2023. And Josie Bass Wiley is the publisher, and hopefully more information coming out on my blog. I'll talk more about it, even more about the kind of the development process, and even equating that back to teaching and teaching teachers. But it takes all these different topics that we know from superhero stories, origin stories, secret identities, powers, weaknesses, mentors, teammates, arch villains. Think about, the teachers actually do have an arch villain. That one's kind of a sneaky one, I hope, that people think about. And taking all those things, it could be for new teachers, could be for veteran teachers, could be a gift book. If you know somebody who might be going into teaching, I have some family members that I've got as pegged for, they'll be getting a copy of the book just to encourage them to look into teaching as a career someday when they get closer to deciding those things. But all of it just meant for, again, reflecting on why are we doing what we do in schools and in the classroom with kids and with their families and with our colleagues. And we enjoy learning. We enjoy school. That's why we work in schools. But kind of reinvigorating what we do and why we do that, and having some fun with it as well. It's not too stuffy, I don't think, and probably some dad jokes thrown in there from time to time as well.
You never go wrong with dad jokes. The book is called Teaching is for Superheroes. It is available for pre-order now.
It is on all the major outlets, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, for pre-sale. So if you want to buy an early Christmas gift and give it to somebody for graduation, there you go.
Yeah, and it's on sale right now too. So I will definitely make sure that we have the link on here, so you can get your significant one or that comic book person a voucher, I guess. It would be a great thing. So definitely check all that stuff out. Okay, I got one more question. If you look at superheroes who don't have any powers whatsoever, talking your Batmans, your Hawkeyes, your Black Widows, your that kind, who would you like to be? Superheroes that literally have no power, that are superheroes because they just happen to shoot a bow and arrow, throw a boomerang or something, right? Like, who would you like to be?
That's a tough one, because the easy answer is Batman, or the
easiest answer, Batman.
You'd have to go to the whole tragic backstory, but you would be rich and you'd have a butler. So I'd probably go with Batman. Get some cool gear.
You'd have a ward depending on which version of Batman.
Yeah.
So
Batman. Nice.
Sidekick would be nice. Yes, I'll give you one of mine down here. I hope you guys have a chance to check out the blog. Again, the blog is called teachlikeasuperhero.blog. It is awesome. I'm sitting here, having a great time with this conversation, but I'm just sitting here like you're the latest blog post that you have is called Who's Your Hugh? And it goes into the whole Ryan Reynolds Hugh thing, and I'm looking forward to the next Deadpool. I got to be honest with that. But I just think that the writing is amazing, and the angles that you take on this is great. Danny, do me a favor. When the book comes out, or when the book is getting ready to come out, please invite yourself back on the show.
I would love to. It's been a great conversation.
And if you have any questions that you like, you know what? Call us up over here at Ask the Tech Coach, and we would love to get a show on. I'd love to have Danny come back on. Maybe we'll do a panel discussion, and we'll be like the Mighty Morphin Power Oh, no, that's a 90s show. I don't know. Would you do that, or would you rather do like the Power Rangers combined, or would you rather be like Devastator? Like, what's your combiner here?
My combiner, Transformers, Devastator's good, or Voltron. Can't go wrong with Voltron.
But the Lions, not the cars, right?
Yes, the Lions, the original Voltron. Yes,
definitely not the train, right? Like we're not trained Voltron on this.
Off the tracks, literally.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, when Voltron did the train Voltron, and then Transformers did a train combiner, that was called jumping the shark to con. I have no shame sometime with these puns. Anyway, hope you guys had a great time with this show. This is episode number 229 over at Ask the Tech Coach. Danny, where can we go and find you? Plug that website and your Twitter one more time.
Sure. The blog is teachlikeasuperhero.blog. I'm on Twitter at ShockerSciEd. That's Shocker like the Wichita State Shockers. And also you can email me at daniel.bergman@wichita.edu, and I'd love to reach out and talk with you about teaching, about superheroes, or about both.
Danny, thanks so much for your time, and please come back on soon.
Thank you.
Hope you guys had a great opportunity to check out this and have a good time. And seriously, guys, take some time in the next week to yourself, relax, put the ed tech away, enjoy the time with your family. I'm going to be looking forward to time with the triplets. And when we come back in our next episode, I've got some pretty big announcements. Not unlike the announcement that Danny just made about what he's doing with his time between now and the spring. I've got something rather similar too that I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and tune into our next episode where we're going to be talking all about that stuff. And that wraps up this episode of Ask the Tech Coach, episode number 229. On behalf of Danny and everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.
You've been listening to Ask the Tech Coach, hosted by Jeff Bradbury of the TeacherCast Educational Network. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach or online at www.askthetechcoach.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.